them. Manish is a 98 bits Pilani A3 engineer, and he's also done his MBA from SP Jain. He was with Amazon Pay and Airtel Money and Citibank before this. And in his current role with WhatsApp Payments, he's focusing on enhancing the experience for users, scaling the service, and working towards contribution to the WhatsApp vision. WhatsApp, as you know, is an in-chat. WhatsApp Pay is an in-chat payment feature, and WhatsApp, you all know, it's just a platform which is where even average a user is supposed to spend 45 minutes of his time. It's believed. Studies say that. So exciting things happening at Manish's end. And then we have. Thank you, Manish. Welcome, Manish. And we have Abhishek with us. Abhishek is a 2002 BITS Pilani. He's from mechanical, and he's an admin turned entrepreneur. He's co-founder and chief marketing officer at Visi, which is building the next 100 million credit cards in India. That's their vision. So welcome, Abhishek. And a bit of background from both you guys before we start off. Manish, you want to start?
Thanks for that introduction. It's great to catch up with a bunch of folks. There's a lot of names that I definitely recollect from my days in Chennai when that was my first job, and we used to catch up at this place on Cathedral Road, which is this cafe, and we used to catch up for idli and dosa. So some folks, and Shrikant used to be there most of the time. So some folks are very, very familiar. So happy to catch up and share whatever sort of I picked up over time. But thanks for the lovely introduction.
Sure, Manish. Abhishek, you want to say a few words?
Hey, thanks, Shankar. I think this platform is very, very personal and important for me as well, because a lot of names that I've known here, and a lot of people have supported me in this journey. I'm completely grateful for them. And now I'm very, very honored to sort of share whatever views I've learned in the past and whatever we are currently doing. And I'm also going to give some shameless plug here about my company for 2 minutes. So I hope you don't mind. Okay. Yeah. No, okay. Very simply, what we are trying to do here is we started with a vision to completely with focused on credit cards. We want to do very simply at two things. One is, how do we make credit card issuance as seamless as possible for the people who are credit worthy, and also bring more people into this category. That's fundamental problem. Second is, how do you make people be better users of credit cards, because credit cards are slightly complex category. How we can make them be better users of cards. So these are two fundamental problems we are trying to solve. And we provide technology and we work with banks to sort of work around these problems. Very simply, this is what we are trying to do now.
Thanks, Abhishek. So this discussion is going to be on digital payments, a peek into the future, and we'll see how credit card payments as well as WhatsApp payments are going to figure out in this great journey. So just a question here to Manish and Abhishek. For WhatsApp, honoring the safety and security of the end user, that's going to be a very important thing for the digital payments future. So what do you guys think about that, the safety and security part of it?
So I'll take a practitioner's view
okay.
for taking a very specific view. I think India is at a stage where there's been some scale. Digital payments have scaled tremendously over the last few years, but there is so much more to be done. And India is not one India. There are many Indias inside India. And when I was a banker, we used to talk about this famous 3 times Pareto, right? 20% of India, 20% of customers give you 80% of business. Within that, 20 gives you 80, and within that, 20 gives you 80. So India is very unique, whether it is in terms of consumption patterns, whether it is in terms of sort of barriers and thinking patterns around what money means to them. For example, it's very interesting to know that there are some parts of India, for example, in rural India, where there is a lot of trust on the sort of the neighborhood banker, but then there are some parts where there is absolute mistrust. And technically they're all banks, right? But still there is some mistrust and there is trust. I think the regulator has done a very good job so far in trying to be very sort of measured and taking it step by step. So a lot of things, for example, earlier that were not sort of hailed as progressive, I think in hindsight have been extremely good for India. For example, when credit card payments in 2007-8, they said, okay, let's do second factor, right? Everybody complained because we say, hey, this is another thing. Why do we need OTP, etc.? But that was only when 10-15 million customers were using it. How do you get a country of 1 billion people to use digital payments? You have to do something for trust. So I think the first part of your answer is there has been a lot of work that is anyways been done at an industry level, and payments is regulated, right? So you can't have a fly-by-night operator and say, hey, let's do this way, etc. So it's fully regulated. Customer protection is sort of at the center of what the regulator does. I think that in that context, I would say security is something that is ingrained in payments. It's a trust-based sort of category or business to speak to. That's the overall practitioner's view, and I don't think and for any payments provider, trust, security, and safety of money is paramount. Whether it is you look at UPI or whether it is wallet, all of these have regulations that determine how you can do it.
Thanks, Manish. Abhishek, you have a take on that?
Yeah. So a couple of 2 or 3 things I want to talk about here. First is, so there's something called as tokenization, which is increasingly becoming important there. So what tokenization does is you don't really share your details about either a card or about your bank accounts. So it is basically tokens which are getting exchanged between entities which are doing transactions. So tokenization is what the industry is moving towards. Pretty much all your transactions or interfacing will happen over tokens. So tokens is what will, from a technology perspective, will sort of make sure the security is taken care of. And like what Manish said, there are many entities which are there. For example, your banks, your NPCI, your networks. Everyone has a layer of security layers which are there. You can't like we can't be fly-by-night operators who are there. You need to pass all of the security mandates for you to enable even this line of transaction going on. And even with respect to when things go wrong, there are mechanisms already in place to sort of address those issues. So we are probably one of the very few nations which have taken this seriously, and right from when things are moving towards mobile, we have taken cautious steps early in the game. For example, in the US, there is no OTP concept of OTP, two-factor authentication, and people are moving towards that. Then it creates a lot of friction. Why do you want to introduce more friction into this already seamless category? So already there's an entire thriving industry based on fraud checks and everything in the Western markets. In India, pretty much credit card frauds are relatively lesser compared to Western markets because of all these proactive measures and already in place. So the industry will move towards tokenization. Plus, your EMV chip is already there. Now, mobile phones are much more complicated and sophisticated than your EMV chips. So your mobile-based tokens will soon start with the de facto security layer and protocol that will transact with all other entities. That will happen.
Sure, Abhishek. So just a question here for you, Manish, and Abhishek, you can chip in as well. How does India got ahead in digital payments? How did it do so far, both on the customer side and the merchant or payer side?
It's an interesting question. How do you answer that question in the scale of where India is? If you look behind, I think we've done a tremendous job. But if you look forward, it seems like we're just about getting started. Let me explain what I mean by that. Say 2006-07, I was wiring up some of the early e-commerce merchants in the country. This was very, very early days of internet. 20-25 million, broad total internet users, and in those days the merchants used to be, say, some airlines. E-commerce didn't exist, and IRCTC and some of these telcos who had just started postpaid bill payments, etc., or and prepaid. And in those days, we say, man, this is a revolution, and And the number of digital payers in this country used to be single digit millions, low single digit millions. From there today, if you look at where digital payments has scaled, I mean, depending on who you ask, or my sense is it's about between around 150 to 200 million customers. Is it a dramatic shift or change? The answer is yes, because say 5 years ago, this number was sub 100 million. Actually, even 3 to 4 years ago, this number was sub 100 million. Say 2015, if you had asked the number, there was less than 80 million customers who had actually used anything other than an ATM withdrawal. So from there, we've made a massive jump. Having said that, there is still so much to be done. Right, 90% of India still transacts with cash. I mean, there have been reports recently around cash circulation being so high, and there could be other reasons as well. But cash circulation is high, cash usage is high. 90% still transacts with cash. A majority of India spends in offline stores, which is where consumer spending happens in stores and not necessarily digital. And there 90% is cash. So there is so much more to be done in a country with a billion people, 1.4 people, and say 900 plus million bank accounts. If only 150 odd million are using digital payments, this is something worth for us as an industry to solve. That's on the customer side. I think the main reason has been the merchant side. See, payments is a two-sided problem. It's a chicken and egg kind of problem, right? Unless somebody accepts, people don't pay. And people don't pay, and people don't accept if people are not paying. So it's a chicken and egg problem. And largely the investment has to become on acceptance. So traditionally the card acceptance machines have struggled in the single digit millions, 2.5, 3 million merchants. There have been some movement now, but with UPI coming in, I think a lot more work has happened. So this number now looks like 15, 20 million. But there are 65 million small businesses in India, micro businesses like shops or Rediwala, Thelawala, etc. So that number goes to such a large thing. So, I think there's a lot more work to done, but phenomenal progress over the last 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, Abhishek, you have something to add?
Yeah, so I have so my view is we should actually whatever you're seeing right here with respect to they're able to seamlessly transfer money between people and merchants, and so all of it, to me, they're all layers built on top of each other that is enabling you to do it today very seamlessly. To me, the credit has to go to somewhere when the regulator decide on ATM penetration. I think that's where the story really starts, because of the consequences of all of the decisions that happen, you're able to do whatever you're doing now. So when ATM penetration started to go up, then the other secondary problem that you need to solve is how do I use different bank ATMs, different bank cards and an ATM. So then you have to devise switches so that works between banks. So inter-bank payment rails have to be built, which is the precursor of whatever you're seeing right now. And in fact, then again, like what Manish said, the merchant system has to come in place. In fact, one of the very early systems that we saw there was BillDesk. It was from 20 years ago. For starting with the utility payments, then your railway ticketing came into picture. So solely when the merchant side of story started to come, then again, your people started transacting on debit cards. Then internet banking came to place. When internet banking came to place, then the need for settling in a couple of hours and days started to come. So then people started developing NEFT. Then the need became, how do I do faster NEFT? Then which became IMPS. So then when IMPS is where the story starts to actually go exponential. When IMPS infrastructure was built, that is where you started looking at all the other apps, platforms have started building on top of IMPS. So that's where things started to take off. So which means whatever you're using here right now has been thought over by policies and built on top of layers of each. 20 years of consistent improvements over systems. And one of the things that has also made it very, very, this is very unique system. It's a consortium that came together. So all banks decided they will take stake in a company that will work for non-profit, and they will all invest together and then make this work. So that is more important, while you're reaping the benefits of whatever it is. But so many billions of dollars have gone behind making this work without taking in profits. Okay, so which is also a reason why now there are new entities which are thinking to be created, which can make money out of it. Now we have developed, so the adoption, merchant side, so all of that has happened by this entity which is created for not-for-profits, and all of the banks have come together to make it work. So we need to give credit to that sort of thinking that has come in place.
Yeah, well, very interesting, Abhishek and Manish. That was a great discussion which you had. And the next question is around this ripple effects of payments. What has been the ripple effects of such developments in payments, the digital payment, in terms of stacks or products built on top of it, or about things like that? Abhishek?
Okay, I'll start from a interesting start. So if you have observed recently Zomato's IPO, about 20% of the volume of IPO subscriptions, or the first level of requests, came from Zerodha. And if you notice, Zerodha is one of the top merchants of UPI. Okay, so look at the trickle down effect. Here you're looking at a company being subscribed in stock market, and this company is being one of the most used UPI merchant. Okay, so see the interesting thing. So there's a stock market broking app which is there, which is being transacted on UPI. So this is very, very interesting. Then the other effect is you have seamless vehicular traffic. So you go on highways, you're seamlessly going. There's a fast tag that is built on top, and so it is enabling the movement of your goods. Pretty much all your fleet companies that are there. There are lakhs and lakhs of fleet companies which are relying on the seamless movement of through FASTag. So you're wasting, I mean, a lot of time used to be wasted. Now they're moving very, very seamlessly. So look at the second order, third order effects of all of these things. And so now the fundamentals of Rails have been put, and people are building use cases and apps on top of that. Really, this will take, so the economy moves down. Now the next part is moving the economy through credit. Credit is always fundamental in moving the economy. So when credit starts built on top of these layers is where the economy will start to shape up in a different sort of a way. I mean, different use cases, like apps like Bullet was there. So Bullet from Jupyter was built on top of UPI credit. So when credit, insurance sort of use cases come on top of this, then you start to look at all of this as a trickle-down effect on penetration of various financial products. Really, what will take off is penetration of financial products. So that is where I think this will lead into, or this stack will get built on top of that. Now, Manish can give more light into this, because I'm guessing somewhere they're also thinking on the same lines of how do you build on top of this.
No, I agree. I think in my view, there are 5 very fundamentally transformational areas or inputs for a society or an individual, for that matter. Say education, healthcare, communication, transportation. I think payments is one such area. Payments and financial services. And financial services is built on a railroad of payments. And the way I think at an overall economy level is, if you have a very fundamental railroad of payments, like, and I'll say what I mean by that. Let's take the example of Amazon. Amazon, invented itself in e-commerce, and they realized that there were only 3 problems to solve: pricing, which is everyday low prices; selection, you can find whatever you want; and third, delivery experience. It's very difficult to find a customer who does not want to buy whatever he or she wants delivered in a very predictable manner as quickly as possible at the lowest price. So they actually invented on these 3. The reason was that the 4th, which was payments, never needed to be invented on. The railroad in the US existed always, right? So just imagine how it's powered that economy. Just to give you an example, today the cost of cash is expected to be about 2.5–3%. It's the cost that the country is carrying today, just because cash is so prevalent. So think of it as a railroad. It powers multiple other use cases, and there are a ton of them. Just imagine, majority of payments that people make or consumption that happens in India or in families is recurring in nature. If we just had a very nice recurring payment solution, right, where you actually don't have to pay every time, just imagine the amount of time it saves. Another example, cash on delivery. Cash on delivery is 500 to 600 basis points higher cost than electronic payments. It's just that businesses don't realize it because it looks like it is cash is free, but actually the cost of cash is 500 to 600 basis points higher than a digital payment. Just imagine if everything became digital in that sense, then look at the time amount of cost and efficiency it will bring into small businesses. So I just think that payments is a railroad, and a ton of other industries or use cases will be built on that. And some of those Abhishek has shared very, very nicely. So I think it's a foundational input. It's almost like sort of an essential business or essential service for the at a national level.
Yeah.
Manish,
Thank
I have
you.
a question here. So you said, managing cash itself is like 500, 600 basis points. Did you guys do any study on what is the impact it has largely on the economy, or what is this cost of operations for the economy? Any idea?
See, if you accept a digital payment today, let's say you're a merchant doing business and you have a store and you have an online store. If you sell something online, typically the cost of online acceptance today will be around 1.5%. If you're at a serious amount of scale, that reduces, but largely say 1.5%. Interestingly, the cost of cash ends up being about almost 6.5–7%. And the reason it is that is because once you start doing cash on delivery, there are some customers who never land up or pick up the product. It has to come all the way back. Then some of it gets lost. Then probably you get some cash. That cash ends up being a little bit counterfeit. So there are so many of these, sort of inefficiencies just in managing cash for your business if you're doing anything digital today. So that difference itself can be the sort of take your business from a profitable to an unprofitable state. So I think that's just one example of how cash can bear your business down. But that is actually true for a lot of other businesses, a lot of small businesses. Let's say Kirana stores. Cash seems cheap and seems free of cost, but the fact is it's not. And that cost is at least another about 3 to 3.5% higher.
Thanks, Manish. So the next question is about things which are interesting, things which are coming up now in digital payments. What about things like NUE or UPI credit? What's your take on that, Manish?
I'll let Abhishek speak on UPI credit because I think he's the better expert on that space. But I can speak to a little bit of what NUE. So we keep hearing this NUE, and it's this new thing, and there's a lot of mystique around it. But we'll try and explain what NUE actually is. So I think a couple of years ago, I don't remember the exact time, but RBI in one of its vision statements, it said that they are looking at a systemic view where they're looking at concentration risk, right? What happens in a concentration risk is when you have a systemically important player and a lot of transactions are concentrated on a particular player, it becomes a risk at a systemic level. To give an example, let's take the example of Kenya, right? 60% of consumer spending in Kenya goes through one player, which is M-Pesa. If M-Pesa went down, if M-Pesa goes down, like they had a downtime, I think many years ago, and their sort of CEO had to come on national television to apologize to the country, right? So it's that important. So I think RBI stated that they would be keen on looking at competitors or alternates to NPCI. Now, NPCI is essentially a clearing house. It looks at parties on both sides, whether it is banks or merchants or banks and banks, and provides a sort of a common routing system where one bank can transfer to another bank, which is say an IMPS or UPI, etc. So that's the history to it. What did it want to do? A consortium of companies can come and create an NPCI equivalent, which is a sort of a central network which can define, say, who could participate in the network, what will be interchange rates, and how do participants have to pay each other, what are settlement norms, when does the money need to come good, under what circumstances should transactions be allowed or not allowed, etc. So it essentially allows you to create a network provider like a Visa, MasterCard, or an NPCI. What it allows this is then use cases are tremendous, right? You can come and you can create a settlement system only for e-commerce. If you want to create a payment system only for e-commerce, if you want to create a payment system for, let's say, rural credit or rural agricultural use cases, where let's say in agricultural use case, you have a cooperative and you have a producer, and there is a middleman in between like a cooperative, and then it gets sold. So those can be certain use cases. There are some people believe that a central bank digital currency could be one use case of such a NUE framework, although it's not confirmed yet. So there's a bunch of use cases and things that can be built by an entity which is an NUE. It's a very, very interesting and exciting space that's yet to unfold. One aspect was also crypto, but that's not, as you know, it's a little bit in flux right now. So I think it's something worthwhile for us to watch out for.
Okay, man. Abhishek?
I think Manish has touched upon a lot of topics there, especially with respect to central bank digital currencies and crypto, etc. So we'll come there in a bit. But with respect to UPI credit, so what essentially is the current systems are made for normal UPI, a debit sort of a scenario which is there. So obviously, when systems are whenever a payment system is involved, a lot of people have cleverly made ways into how you can have credit on top of UPI. Okay, while strictly from a documentation perspective, it's a gray area. They have not defined it really, really well in terms of how credit is going to operate on UPI. That's the state of it right now, which is also why 2 days back, a sort of an embargo sort of situation that happened with respect to how credit has to be happening on UPI, because a lot of players have interpretation issues with respect to how you can operate credit on top of UPI, because credit on top of UPI is really could drive a lot of things. I mean, imagine you simply taking credit and settling it and using it to merchants on there, and then you find a way to settle it back and repay back your credit that you have taken.
Abhishek, I think we lost you.
That. So again, you'll have parallel risk systems that will evolve to accommodate this. But then currently, there's a gray area with respect to how credit is embedded into this UPI. So they call it an overdraft. They have mentioned with respect to overdraft. So there is still not the NPCI is not very clear with respect to how they want to handle credit on top of UPI. But I'm sure there's going to be a lot of pressure to have credit on top of UPI. But what I wanted to talk a little bit more about is this central bank digital currency that Manish touched upon. So it's a very interesting area that worldwide that is going towards. If you look at recently, the rise of Bitcoin, crypto, all of that is becoming the norm. When it has come to a fact that earlier it was a niche set of people who are dealing with Bitcoin, crypto. Now it is becoming mainstream. And now central banks have taken note of how it is going to help them to sort of manage this new form of mechanism of trading value. Okay, so that is where banks have almost pretty much 90% of central banks are doing research at this point in time on how they can get into this. Okay, even RBI last week they have issued a statement saying that they are considering a form of a digital rupee. We don't know what form this is going to take, but some form of digital rupee. So, but what in India, there is a precursor use case to the central bank digital currency, which is your Aadhaar-enabled benefit system, which is already there. So today, a lot of people have gotten benefits directly from the central bank through this Aadhaar-based payments. My sense is that your first set of use case for your central bank digital currencies at some level will start with how you can trickle down benefits of the central government or central schemes directly to the end citizen. From there, things will start to get built on. So, but we don't know how this will take shape, but this is my sense that this is how is a likely scenario that will happen.
Thanks, Abhishek. That was interesting.
Manish, any views on this? I mean, on CBDC?
I think something worthwhile watching. I think between 10 and 15, if I recollect, governments are trying. So every government in the world is currently at some stage of identifying a digital currency that is centralized. Now, it's an interesting dichotomy because when crypto came in, it was meant to be completely decentralized. And traditionally, banking started in Italy with this old Medici thing, which you can watch on Netflix, where there was a central ledger of a borrower and a depositor, and they started knowing what's happening. With Bitcoin, that changed because then the whole sort of world became the ledger, right? So it is completely distributed ledger that allows people to authorize and authenticate transactions. It creates a very federated way of moving money. Now that's being sort of looked at in a sort of a digital currency sense. Okay, you can't issue a new currency. We already have a currency, but the digital form of that currency, it has to be issued. Who becomes the depository? Is it centralized or not? Or is it completely federated or distributed from an authentication perspective? These are all open questions. If there is a depository, who is that depository? Is it for retail payments or is it for wholesale payments? These are some very, very big open questions that the regulator is answering now and should be considering. But it'll be very exciting to see. What it allows is, I think if the more adoption it says, it will definitely see cash going down in the ecosystem, and that's always good. So yeah, something worth watching out for.
Sure, Manish. So, so being a BITSAA forum, primarily there's a BITS question in this. So what's been your inspiration at BITS, or was there an aha moment you had at BITS which helped you shape your career or something like that, or your future?
You remember this movie 3 Idiots, right? So we are this Suhas. Abhishek and I are this Suhas from 3 Idiots. So engineering degree kiya, fir MB kiya, fir bank mein naukri kiya, right? So it's the worst combination as shown in that movie. But yeah, I personally didn't have any aha moment related to the domain that I was on. But what I really college just whizzed past, right? Just part of this gang who is just happy to graduate. Unlike, say, some of my other classmates or batchmates on this group who are, sort of technically or academically slightly more fortunate. I wasn't. And so it just whizzed past. But the one thing that I really liked, and this course under Professor Raghuram at that time, so it's around networking and the internet, and so many of these things were moving at that time. So I was just fascinated by that. And largely post Pilani, I just started looking at that space. Then I got into my MBA, and I really liked how, and I read about this gentleman at Citi who was the CEO called John Reed, and he was doing a bunch of stuff in using digital, and that just sort of got me interested in the space. And I joined Citi and joined that space and asked for that space. So yeah, that's what got it going. But otherwise, memories from Pilani have got nothing to do with life inspirations. It was just about fun. And my wingies, when we are still in touch, and there was so much we used to do. So it was just about getting a world exposure of people, diversity, various different views. And I had been very, very protected prior to that, never met people. So yeah, that was it for me.
Interesting, Manish.
Rob, is there a list of questions, or can we ask randomly? Do you have a system of asking questions?
Yeah, you can pitch in if you have one. Sure.
I have one related to bits and one that's a comment, but more again on the UPI. I don't see the BEAM or UPI being used in post office, say a museum, all these places where still cash is used in big time. Is there a reason the government is resistant to that, or the employees are resistant? You have to, for a speed post, and you have to go a 52 rupee change, and they don't have a change. You have to run around, go to the nearest ATM. So why is this resistance? In spite of, I see the central government's pushing the digital currency.
Let me take a shot at that. I think the problem you pointed out is true. But you have to understand one thing, this country of 1.5 billion, nearly like 1.4 billion people, isn't built overnight. Right? The credit card industry has been around for 60 years, and we know they haven't done shit in this country. Right? So we've done this in 4 years as a country. It's become the largest payment instrument. It is a case study for central banks across the world in terms of the fastest scale up in any payment instrument. So my first response to you is you have to look at it in the context of how much time it's been around. And the customer side has scaled significantly. Some of the acceptance will take some more time. Before UPI, there were only 3 million merchants in this country. Now UPI has got it to 20 million. So you can imagine how much it's helped. I think in some of the spaces, which is whether the use cases that you mentioned, whether it is post office, in some cases it is there, but some of it will take time. UPI is a very unique model. It's a push model. The customer initiates a transaction, right? So some of these integrations may take time wherever there are sort of legacy systems, etc. But we have to. Some of it will catch up over time. I have no doubt that it'll get used in a massive way. But yeah, remember that it is in the context of the last 4 years, where credit cards and cards have been around in this country for 40 years and globally for 60 years, at least.
Right. I also, but I saw the positive aspect of this was my mother gets a pension, and she finds it very difficult to go to an ATM, and this postman comes with this Aadhaar linked what you call the machine, and it is amazing because she found, and the postman initiated it. I think they are incentivized to do that, and she was delighted because otherwise she had to go to ATM, as it was one of the biggest challenges she faced. And to step into an ATM and look into it, most of the ATMs had no lightings and all that issues. And this guy brought in with the fingerprint sensor and everything. So that is an amazing experience, and it's been that. But not all postmen also do that. I think they find it difficult to carry that amount of cash also. That is also an issue. But the system of UPI Aadhaar, and that has been that was very exciting for my mom, actually. That's it. And the comment, yeah.
In fact, post office, to me, post office is also, there's a lot of things post office can add value with respect to whatever is there. In fact, we've had some experience of working with them when we try, because we knew that post offices had all addresses, the local postman knew who's living where, everything. In fact, banks had issues with this because banks are parallelly building or have built a costlier infrastructure to verify people. Okay, we said that we'll go to the post office because post offices knew people and they should be able to validate. Whoever they knew, etc. We were trying to build something around it, but we realized that it takes its time. Okay, like it said that whatever it takes its time. So yeah, well, risk is there, but we are also trying to balance out with banks, and there are areas where post offices are very well connected, and rural, especially pin codes where we can't build an infrastructure. Post offices are a great way to go. Having said that, there's a lot of trust on the post office banking, which is there. I'm sure it will have its own revolution with respect to how it can transform itself. At the same time, keep the inclusion agenda in place. That will happen. So, like Manish said, it takes time. To me, a lot of what I've heard is there are people who are tasked to reform this. So that will happen.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and I don't think it's just to qualify one thing, right? I don't think it should be viewed as a government versus private sector question. And I'll tell you why. Today, some of the most innovative digital solutions are coming from the government. Believe me, Aadhaar was one, right? How do you get 1 billion people, right, digitally connected? Aadhaar is just one example. If you look at DigiLocker today, oh man, every single certificate, whether it's your driver's license to your PAN card, everything's available digitally, and you can show it whenever driving to anybody. So it's not a private sector versus government thing. I think there are a lot of merchant use cases today that don't accept UPI. It's an acceptance game that needs to be solved over time. Traditionally in India, acceptance has lagged issuance. Remember that. And that's always been a challenge.
I think.
Thanks, Manish. Hari, you had a question, you want to put it forth, or?
No.
I think,
no.
Shankar, you can open it for a question, right?
Yeah, let me do that.
3 questions. Hey Manish, I'm from 98 batch as well. So I'll go quickly. So one, I know a lot of regulatory things have taken a lot of time for WhatsApp Pay to launch UPI, etc. But in your reckoning, so when is WhatsApp Pay going to become mass popular in adoption like Google Pay, Phone Pay, Paytm, etc. Right? Like, so that's one.
Sure. So yeah, you're right about the context. But yeah, late last year, WhatsApp got approval to launch, and thanks to NPCI, who was very supportive. Post that, I think the focus has been on trying to prepare for and get from a product sense, what will it take to serve the next 100 million customers. What WhatsApp is uniquely placed with is that we are already in everybody's pocket, and customers, just the footprint that we have. So I think I see WhatsApp Pay being in a very unique position to add value to the ecosystem overall, right? To get the next 100 million customers to digital payments. That's where we see ourselves adding value. Not to say that we don't see ourselves serving the first 150 million customers. So yeah, I think it's very early days for us, as they say. It's sort of we're not even 1% done, just getting started. I would say watch this space, and you'll have something to sort of see and witness very soon. But yeah, I can leave it at that.
Absolutely, that's going to be an interesting challenge. We'll watch out for you, Manish. Rooting for that. And second question is, we've been observing a lot of neobanks globally becoming very large, right? And in India, a bunch of guys have raised money like Jupiter and Epify and like large guys. But what are your comments on neobanks? What do you think between India, global business model, revenue model, etc.? Any comments there?
So we have Mr. Neobank Abhishek, who will answer that question. Please.
Good one, Manish.
Okay, so
I'm happy to share my views later, but he owns the topic and he's the subject matter expert. So Abhishek, over to you.
Okay, currently the way the trajectory of starting point is pretty much very similar with respect to how banking worldwide has always been about complying to your processes, regulator, and all of that. So in doing that, they have missed the consumer centricity. I would call it that aspect of business. And over a period of time, the DNA itself has become like that. And what these neobanks have traditionally tried to do is phase one, they have tried to sort of build an experience layer on top of that, and make products penetrate more easily, adopt more easily, make the user experience fantastic, and then do cross-selling of product. That's how phase one has been. In India, and again, the gameplay from a supply side perspective, there are smaller banks which partner with your neobank players for them to get quickly penetrated into the market. So they can't compete with the likes of HDFCs, SBIs of the world. So which means players like SBM, Federal Bank, your DCBs of the world will have to partner with these fintechs to sort of have traction in the market. So that's how they see, that's how the ecosystem sort of works now. But what will increasingly happen is with the advent of now Bharat Pay Centrum coming and taking a banking license, now that's a game changer here. Now clearly from a digital world, someone is having a banking license and who can do more. And Navi, who is started by Sachin Bansal, now they're into multiple products there. What they don't have is a banking license. Pretty much they do everything that the bank is doing from a products perspective, from an expansion market perspective, just that they don't have a banking license there. So it will go deeper and deeper with respect to now every neobank will eventually want, or in secret they would aspire to have a banking license. I mean, pretty much all founders you speak, they said they would love to have a banking license there, but then you need to have some capital requirements to get there. So that is where things will go. And now customers are getting a flavor of what are these neobanks. Like there are a couple of them which are there. And like I said, phase 1 is starting, but phase 2 is where when regulatory aspects of it is getting covered, where neobanks can really take licenses and then operate. That is where it will go. But there's another interesting thing that I'm noticing. A lot of traditional banks are now creating neobanks within them. I'll give an example. Kotak, IndusInd Bank, IDFC banks. So they are the challenger banks which are creating divisions inside their own bank, which will create products, experiences completely new, that is not attached to their existing systems or the current way of working. So that is how traditional banks are responding to this change. They've realized that they need to up their experience game, and they're also hiring from people who can do that. So which means they're creating a subculture within the bank, or probably a dotted line culture within the bank that operates as a neobank. And in fact, a lot of banks have come to us and said that, why don't you completely build a credit card stack and give to us? Okay, so which is more agile, more adopting to newer trends, etc. Can we offer BNPL products instantly? Can we offer some merchant offers directly on our platform? So can we offer more integrations? So these are the needs that banks are coming and asking us. So which means banks are also upping their game, and the neobanks want to get more and deeper inside the bank. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic to see. Sorry for the long answer, but yeah.
Just add one interesting nuance to it. The way at least I see neobanks is there is this Gurukul concept of education, and there is the sort of the CBSE, state board, ICSE, built for scale. The point I'm trying to make is traditionally banks have always had a one size fits all approach. And the reason for that is systems never existed to create very sort of personalized or at a very micro segment level, right? And therefore you always had one credit card, which is you pay and you transact, and then 15 days later you make a payment or you revolve or whatever. But there are multiple different needs, and customers exist of different types. So some customers want to only pay by EMI, and that's something that you are seeing today. There are some customers who actually don't need to revolve ever. So if you ask me, I never, like in 18 years, I've never revolved, right? I paid every time 15 days later, but I am getting the benefits of where 75% of the customers are revolving. So if you take a step back and see what is happening, neobanks are actually using technology to create very micro segments that and products catered to that specific segment. Using the underlying rails of a bank. Now, in developed markets, every customer is extremely valuable. So when you serve that customer and that need, you can make a ton of money. I think the question to be answered in India is, how many such valuable customers exist, right? If a digital credit card ends up giving the same credit card that a bank does, a bank will always be more profitable because it's so closer to the source of truth and getting cheaper money. And somebody later in the downstream in the ecosystem will get it more expensive. So how you innovate, identifying very clear use cases. Are those customers valuable in what revenue models you can build? I think it's going to determine how it's successful or not. But I think it's clearly good time for the customers. So the customers definitely will benefit because now multiple solutions are going to come. You will have choice. Otherwise, you had to choose between the guy who pests you more on sales, right? So kitna call zyada aata tha, you used to give him the credit card. Chal yaar application leke chala ja, right? But otherwise now you can choose a lot, which I think is brilliant. And from customer perspective, great. Industry perspective, let's think about it.
Absolutely. One example of our own BITSAA and Junior that we saw a few months back was this company called Pencilton, who did a Q&A chat with us, which is basically the neobank for kids, right? School-going kids, high school and college as well. Like you said, that's a Gurukul that banks sort of are not focusing on. The third last question from my side is like, what are some of the ideas that you would probably give to wannabe founders here in the room that can leverage WhatsApp Pay and obviously whatever you're going to do, given your hundreds of millions of consumers that you have? Is there a way to sort of take benefit of that, leverage WhatsApp Pay, the penetration of that, of WhatsApp and WhatsApp Pay that's going to be, and then create businesses on top of it? Is there a platform approach, or would it be more full
It is.
stack?
It is. And it's really simple. Today, if you look at WhatsApp, I think it's been fortunate to have the trust of hundreds of millions of customers in India. And whatever you and customers trust it, including say my 70-year-old mother, right? It's the first thing she does in the morning. And by the way, if she doesn't wish her sisters and on her family group good morning, they start having issues, right? So it is so sort of in everybody's lives. One of the pieces is that even today, as it exists, a ton of business and interactions between businesses and customers is happening. I bought my pen 2-3 years ago, a pen that I want to really sort of buy. I bought a pen on WhatsApp. I recently for my motorcycle, some accessories were required. I bought it through WhatsApp. So a ton of stuff happens, and I think for businesses wanting to connect to customers, we have two things. We have the business API, which you can connect to customers directly with. Then there is a business app that you can download if you're a small business. I think payments is something that we look forward to sort of providing over the next few months, where you can actually just collect payments from customers right there and then. The approach, I think, is largely, hey, it's a platform where businesses and customers can connect in addition to customers and customers connecting. So, customers will find businesses and businesses will serve their customers, and we'll just provide a sort of a very easy and a seamless and a native way to collect payments through on WhatsApp. So that's the approach. We're not there yet, but something, as I said, to watch out for very soon.
I think Hari is very keen on what sort of platform WhatsApp is going to offer. So a lot of questions on that. Anyway, nice, Hari. Thanks for asking.
More important, where to park his money. More importantly, on where to park his money for Hari.
Thanks, Sundar. Thanks for joining. Yeah.
Any questions?
So, one thing, Abhishek, you want to relive on those BITSAA memories? I think we got cut off on that sometime in the middle.
Okay, I'll wrap it up quickly as well. So first thing, BITS is very, very close to my heart with respect to it has shaped me to an individual what I am. When I joined BITS, I was completely thrown out of my comfort zone. Been sheltered here in Chennai, in home and everything. Go there, completely whatever you've grown up, everything's devastated there. First sem, it took me courage to sort of figure out, hey, what needs to be done in BITS. So that's where, it changed my thinking with respect to, hey, you're thrown into a system and how do you figure out, how do you play around? So that's really something that keeps coming to me every time when I move, because I've lived actually very, very different lives post BITS. For 5 years, I was an engineer in a factory. For 5 years, I was completely in advertising, and now completely leading a life in complete fintech. I'm talking to banks, all of those things. So whenever it got into me, some first principles thinking of what is it really that you want to do, how the system works, how do you, because BITS is completely about the system, because you are left to do everything yourself, your timetable, you manage your life there. So I think made me very self-reliant and resilient. That's a big takeaway from me for BITS experience.
Thank you. Thank you, Abhishek.
Yeah, Abhishek, what's your most sort of everlasting memory of Pilani? Something that you never forget, like the first thing that comes to your mind.
It's a funny one. I don't know how to say it here. So I used to lead CRAC, the Creative Activities Council, and we were going to purchase some stuff for Oasis. So that time someone was supposed to come with me, and they couldn't come, so I was tasked to go alone to Delhi to buy stuff. I didn't know Hindi at that point in time. So I understood Hindi a little bit, but I was supposed to go from Pilani to Delhi, go buy stuff and come back. It was a disaster, complete disaster. What happened? So I was supposed to take a bus that goes to Delhi, but I took the wrong bus. It dropped me in Loharu. Then I had to figure out something from Loharu to Delhi. Then I landed up in some place, I didn't know what it was. So I was keep asking, where is this, in some language, in English. I tried to ask the fellow passenger sitting in the Jeep, which is like 30 people sitting in the Jeep. This person was telling me Rohtak. I thought it was a bad word in Tamil. Okay. So then I was telling, what is Rohtak, man? Okay. Then he figured out, he asked me a question with respect to, hey, do you see Hindi films? I said, see Hindi films. So, do you know who was Mallika Sherawat? I said, I know Mallika Sherawat. Okay, of course you know Mallika Sherawat. He said, Mallika Sherawat, hometown, Rohtak. Okay. So, I think that is a very, very stark memory. Like, I wouldn't forget Rohtak in my life. So, from there on, figured out a way to go to Delhi. From there it come back. That was complete disaster. But then that probably that one day of going out and figuring out is like stayed with me.
Very interesting.
Awesome.
I would like to share an experience about Manish I had. I mean, it was his leadership skill or whatever you can call. Some typical transportation end of semester, moving out of the college and going to ISBT, that bus. There's some issue. And for long, the bus was standing and quite no one was moving. The bus was not moving. There was some issue with the bus and everything. Manish immediately climbed up the bus, shifted the material from one bus. He did it until then. No one did any action for 1 hour. People were just sitting idly, and it was winter time. He just climbed up, started shifting the stuff all by. Once he did, everyone followed, and that showed somewhere is what you call spirit, leadership skill. Something I think I still recollect that action he did. I don't know whether he remembers that.
No, I definitely do. After that also I tried it once. It wasn't very successful. That's my most everlasting memory of Pilani.
Got a bad
in my Centism, I got up on stage during a movie screening and started to dance before the movie was starting. And I remember R. Mahesh, I think the professor at that time, he said, please come. He said, come and meet me tomorrow. And he says, you're not passing out. I'll make sure you don't graduate. Next time I tried some leadership, I think it didn't turn out well, but yeah, it was fun. And thank you for sharing that.
I recollect even that because it was something, people was just sitting idly for an hour, I think. When just waiting for some action to be taken, and someone had to act actually. That was you.
Okay. Any more questions?
Just happy to find another crack junior among the crowd. So this is that, yeah. I was a secretary before it became a department. I hear it is a department now. So
yeah. Hey, thanks. We should connect sometime.
We never had a shortage of crack people at Pilani.
Yeah, that is true. That's perfectly true. Oh, we are all one big family of cracks, right? So.
Hey, Shankar, can we minute for your for a video on so that we have a photo shoot?
So we can take a photo of everybody. So everybody can switch on the video.
I have my wingy Ashwin there. He's sitting in a car or something. Hey,
Hey Abhishek, How are you doing? I listened to your words here. Nice ones, nice thoughts.
Thank you. Yeah.
Vaishnavi, Shyam, Ram, Narendran, Sashi, and the OnePlus Nod Lord. I don't know who that is. Maybe all of you as well.
No, the moment you asked for video, Shrikant left. Did you notice?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think Shashi is also 98. Is it the same?
Hey, there is
Shashi?
a triple S from 98. Yeah, Shashi.
Triple S is my wingy. He's my wingy.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Shashi is from 98.
Krishna TV downstairs.
Yeah, Manish. Hi.
153.
Same batch. So Manish, I remember your mime sessions and mime days. Awesome days, no?
Yeah. Triple S was 154.
And the first. Yes, 158, Manish.
159.
159 was yours, correct. I remember the first HDC play where you were the chaiwala.
Yeah, those were the days. What fun.
So good, no? So I think Manish is there, myself, Hari, then Shankar, and then Bubu is also there. So it looks like a small 98 batch reunion. Awesome.
And we are anyways meeting in a couple of years. We are meeting in a couple of years again. I hope.
Hopefully.
Hey, don't remind us, man. We're already old, huh?
Yeah, no, 95 and 97 are still waiting for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. It's so nice to catch up.
No, the later the better, guys.
So many
We'll feel less old, right?
Age is just a number, Hari, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
I hope Shrikant is not hearing to any of this.
What was that all about?
See?
He's back. He's
They're
back.
feeling all old, Shrikant.
Shrikant, 1 minute.
No, it's always nice. Abhishek and I had a lot of interaction the last 2 years when I got to know him very well, and he's also passionate about bits. Manish, if I'm not mistaken, you came back from Mahabs for that Sunday evening meeting once, if I remember, way back in 2000. That was his commitment to BITSAA Chennai and its activities. So, he was like we talking about Kiranmay sponsored by FL Smith. He was sponsored by Citibank at that time to BITSAA Chennai.
Yeah. Which was that restaurant we used to meet? This was Woodland.
That was Woodlands Drive-In. Woodlands Drive-In, it doesn't exist now.
Yes, it doesn't exist.
Used to catch up on Sundays there every time.
Nice. I think after the lockdown, we should do that with Saturn.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think all of us would want a in-person meeting. We are so bored with Zoom meetings happening for almost a year and a half now.
For what it's worth, my wing, we do an annual get-together, and we've been doing it for some time now. So the last time, just before COVID, we met up in Goa, and it's like whoever can make it makes it. It's a long weekend, 3 days. Just come, drink and go back. but largely that's the plan. But we've been catching up. Just that last year we haven't been able to. But as a wing, we tried to start that. But anyways, as a batch, we are catching up a couple of years from now, hopefully.
Wonderful.
So look forward to that.
Wonderful.
We were just discussing that after the 88 batch, I think Ratish was the one who brought it to the attention, saying after the 88 batch, the 98 batch seems to have stalwarts coming up from BITS. So if that correlation is going to go in forward, then it's going to be probably the 2008 batch.
And that includes Ratish, so.
Yes, it does. Maybe that's why he said that.
So guys,
there is a question there on contacts. Some Jayesh is asking how to contact Manish and Abhishek. If you can type out your contacts on the chat box, I think they will take it up, or that's fine.
Already done, Shrikant. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So guys, shall we call it?
Yes,
Yeah, I
a
think.
very wonderful discussion.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Manish. Thanks, Abhishek, for that wonderful discussion which we had. Nice to hear you, both of you. Thanks for sparing your time. And thanks to BITSAA Chennai for giving this, for conceptualizing and organizing this. The concept team and the organizing team, hats off to you. Aarti, Sriram, Murugavel, Srikant, and then a bunch of folks actually. Ratish for the posters and all that stuff. So thanks a lot, guys, and BITSAA International for providing the platform. And the audience, you've been a lovely audience. Thank you, BITSAians and everybody, for making it a good show. Thanks, Manish. Thanks, Abhishek.
Hey, thanks.